Joining us now on the line is Ann Coulter, best-selling author. Go ahead, Ann. What's your theory on the decline of the Academy Awards?
Well, I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I never watch them. I didn't even know they were on last night until one of my friends called me. He was giving me updates. He's a Hollywood guy, giving me updates about every half an hour on their shout-outs to transgenders and intersectionality. So I gathered from his reports to me that the whole Me Too movement got sort of short shrift, and suddenly it became all about, immigrants, more blacks in movies, transgenders, and intersectionality. I don't know what any of that has to do with Me Too, but I guess they don't want people to notice. I never hear about this like Harvey Weinstein type stuff in the country music industry. In fact, in the music industry at all, in the modeling industry, in
well, there's a little
I don't
bit,
know, car manufacturers of America. You never hear about it in professional tennis. It's pretty much isolated to the one industry that has the ugliest men in the universe producing movies and TV shows with some of the hottest babes in the universe.
Well,
and an entire industry with zero more.
See it happening. So, 4 hours of my life gone forever. Watch the Oscars. I did it for you. Granted, I did fall asleep for 1 hour. Oh, did I drool. But still, that's 3 hours of my life down the toilet. Now, we could just focus on the political statements made, but we get that stuff. Instead, why do people like me who really, really love movies really hate the Oscars? I grew up with the 1970s Saturday matinees where you arrived in the morning and you left when it's dark. Planet of the Apes, The Neptune Factor, Willard, or disaster epics like Earthquake, Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno. Movies were the escape for a kid in suburbia when there wasn't much else but cement playgrounds littered with pull-tab beer cans. Remember those? Those were great. Cut myself a lot. But times have changed. Now we're being informed, not entertained. The Oscars now ignore the escape, bowing to pressures of groupthink as virtue signaling Trump's shared human experience. Movies were once about entertaining us, yet the Oscars recast art as a conduit for the new religion of identity.
None other than President Trump called Get Out the best first 3 quarters of a movie this year. We don't make films like Call Me By Your Name for money. We make them to upset Mike Pence.
A president that chose with hate, he don't control our fate because God is great.
And like everyone in this room and everyone watching at home, we are dreamers.
To all the dreamers out there, we stand with you.
Well, thank you. Why were the Oscars on TV to begin with? To see the stars. Now it's an off-site retreat for a troubled industry, something you might accidentally walk into at a hotel reception hall. And so the stars don't realize how bad they look when they try to talk to America by crashing a nearby theater.
We brought you some goodies.
You are live on the Oscars right now. In fact, you see that audience? There's Meryl Streep. Who would like a hot dog? Does anyone want a hot dog? All right, let's fight. Do not aim the hot dogs at the vegetarians. Oh, there you go. Ansel, go ahead, fire that thing into the crowd. This is a lot of fun.
In the Oscars, we can eat and dance and scream.
Please welcome Tiffany Haddish and Maya Rudolph.
Oh, your beard smells delicious.
Oh, we brought you some goodies, you peasants. They're so much better than you are. So as the Oscars try to explain why movies matter, you end up hating everything about movies. And that's not fair to the movies. In short, if you hate the Oscars, it's because you love movies. That's something Hollywood might address, but they won't.
Here's a question.
Well, I posed.
Here's a question. Let's have a real question. Can men and women work together in the workplace?
Yes, I do it.
How do you know?
Because I work with a lot of women.
Right. Well, it's been happening for, what, 40 years? And things are deteriorating very rapidly at the moment in terms of the relationships between men and women. It's like we don't know if men and women can work together successfully.
But in what ways? Because
in the sexual harassment way.
Because 40 years ago, I would have been, well, I don't know, if I was a white man, I would have been Jacqueline's boss and I could have done whatever I wanted, right? And that there would be almost no recourse that a woman who's working under me would have. Now they have some recourse. I mean, is that a?
There was recourse back then too. You could take people to the police.
You could. Do you think that was happening a lot? I mean, like,
I think it's a dreadful thing to have to go to the police if you're being sexually assaulted.
If you feel like there's a reduction in harm, right? That things are better. So you feel like right now the atmosphere in corporate workplace is the exact same that it was 40 years ago?
No, but I'm not sure. I'm not saying that it's any better.
It's not any better.
Well, maybe it is.
What is? I guess like not to ask you to sort of prove a negative, but I think that there is plenty of evidence if you look at all the stories that are coming out. Do you not feel like any of the stories that you've heard about what Hollywood is like, do you feel like that's not evidence that this is a problem?
Evidence that Hollywood is a problem?
Yeah.
Yeah, but when I look at Hollywood, all these people coming out of Hollywood talking about how sexual misbehavior is a problem, and I think people in Hollywood are talking about that, they've been capitalizing on sexual misbehavior for like 100 years.
But that, I mean, look, those are unrelated in a lot of ways. Yeah, like they're,
I mean,
you as a professor should know like about correlation and causation. Like you're basically saying, well, you know, there have been movies with sex in it, therefore a PA on the set of a movie, of course, should be expected to be sexually harassed.
No, I'm saying
those two are separate worlds in any sort of pure logical sense. Like that is just a classic mix-up of correlation and
why are they separate worlds? We don't know how to draw the boundaries.
Because
here's the question.
Do you feel like any movie that has, like, if you talk about sex in your classroom, or if you talk about sort of sexual behavior in your classroom, and another classroom does not talk about sexual behavior at all, you feel like your classroom would have a higher chance or higher incidence rate of sexual assault or harassment?
No, but I would say that if I was part of an organization that built entire dozens of careers on sexual provocativeness, I would be very careful about like waving the ethical flag in the sexual wars. So you think Hollywood doesn't exploit sex? Hasn't the feminists been saying that for 30 years? The entire entertainment industry does nothing but exploit women sexually. Is that true or not? And if it is true, then aren't they contributing to the problem? And if they're contributing to the problem, then where's all the ethical...
But you're arguing at that point that Hollywood is one sort of totemic idea, that it is one sort of... That a woman who works in entertainment must then like pledge allegiance to this idea of sort of totemic Hollywood and not come out and give her story. Like you're saying that she's like somehow complicit in all of it.
The degree to which we're all complicit in what's going on is unspecified. I said already, you know, we don't know how to have an adult conversation about sex. It's not surprising. It's not the least bit surprising. So, but
I don't like. So then, what is it then? Like, because this seems to be like the sort of collectivist thinking that you rail against. You know, you're saying that Hollywood is one thing, and that Hollywood made its own bed, and therefore Hollywood should not speak about this issue because they're the ones that were pushing this agenda.
No, it isn't that they shouldn't speak about it.
Or that they
should speak
do not
carefully
have the moral
about it.
Authority to
they should speak carefully about it.
Do you feel like they're not speaking carefully?
Absolutely, they're not speaking carefully. Not in the least.
What is out of control about it?
Well, trial by public opinion, I suppose, is part of what's out of control about it.
Trial by public opinion? Do you think that's what's happening?
Yeah, to some degree, sure. It's very easy for people to come forward with accusations and demolish someone's reputation. That's trial by public opinion.
So, I mean,
and we don't have any conversation about the other side of the coin. You don't think women manipulate men sexually for advancement in the workplace?
Do you not think that there has been any sort of pushback against this Me Too movement at all?
Yeah, there's been some.
Okay, so then what do you mean we don't have conversations about the other side? It seems like every time I read any sort of publication, it's split more or less 50-50 and actually increasingly more towards like maybe this thing is out of control. It seems like that narrative is certainly out there.
Yeah, true. It has started to emerge in the last couple of weeks. That's true. Yeah.
So then...
I don't understand. I guess I don't understand the question exactly.
Well, my question is essentially that like when you...
Is there sexual harassment in the workplace? Yes. Should it stop? That'd be good if it did.
Well, here now to react is the host of the Michael Knowles Show, Michael J. Knowles. Michael, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Now, ahead of the award show, producers said that Jimmy Kimmel was going to avoid pointed political commentary. Do you think he succeeded on that front?
No, I think he just avoided jokes and entertainment. Jimmy Kimmel, I think, made history last night. It was the first joke-free opening monologue to any Oscars telecast. though perhaps we should be happy that he didn't cry during the broadcast. He may cry when the ratings come out. Last year was a 9-year low in ratings for the Oscars. I suspect this year will beat it. Jimmy Kimmel, it was amazing in his opening monologue. He actually told us that Hollywood celebrities, him included, consider their primary purpose to push left-wing activism, not to entertain, to push activism. He said these speeches are a great platform. We have to change the world. And that is how they were used throughout the entire night. We might call this the intersectional Oscars. Some person, as we played, named Common, went out and he sang about how the NRA is not God's way. All while, ironically, he was joined on stage by Cecile Richards, the president of Planned Parenthood, who has killed 3.8 million babies in her time at that job. It was all activism all night long. The jokes that you heard, the couple of barbs from Jimmy Kimmel, they were the most tedious, low-hanging fruit you could hear. The Republican president is a racist. We've never heard that one before. Or the best, I think, was how Vice President Mike Pence is uncomfortable with pederasty. We make movies such as Call Me By Your Name to make Mike Pence uncomfortable. Aren't we all supposed to be uncomfortable by that? What happened to the Me Too movement? And the most ironic moment of all is that the Academy, in the year of Me Too, in the year of Harvey Weinstein, awarded a statue to Kobe Bryant, perhaps the most prominent accused rapist in the United States.
Huh. All right. Well, it's interesting, and I just want to talk about what happens to the actual show, because I think the reason they see the ratings decline is that people, A, don't want to lecture, and B, this country is comprised of people on the left, people on the right, and some people in the middle. If you're on the left, you would have loved a show like last night. If you're in the middle, you just would have been probably uncomfortable, and if you're on the right, you would have hated it. So I don't understand why you would want to break apart your audience like that.
I think they can't resist it. Donald Trump has driven them crazy, as we have seen since November 2016. And there were a few moments last night of gracious speeches of entertainers who primarily entertain and pursue their art, such as Gary Oldman. Going up there, he thanked America, he thanked Winston Churchill, he thanked the Academy, and he left. But fear not, if you were turned off by such a show of grace, Frances McDormand came on right after and started shrieking about feminism and how millionaire actresses should make even more money. They cannot resist it. They think that their primary role is to push politics and not to entertain. And the more that they believe that, the more people are going to tune out.
Well, yeah, and you know, I know that you watched the whole entire thing because you were live tweeting it, so you must be pretty tired. But the show was, what, 4.5 hours long, so there were also a lot of non-political moments as well, and awards handed out. So some politics, but a lot of fun as well. Michael J. Knowles, thank you so much for being with us today.
See, this is the hypocrisy that the left, this is what they show. They can do anything that they want to do, and it's hush-hush. But as soon as it's on the conservative side, oh, it's a problem. Hollywood have their problem. They need to solve their own problems. They don't need to sit on their bully pulpit and preach to us, the American people, baby. Because we voted for the president, and we don't want them to politicize this here. They need to stick to the script. Okay, we paid them to entertain us.
They said originally, the Oscars made a big deal about it's not going to get political. The host is Jimmy Kimmel, who has been very political. And actually here we've got a quote from Oscar producer Michael DeLuca. He says, Jimmy's job as host of his own show is different than that as his job of Oscars. His monologue, his humor is less issue-oriented. For our purposes, it will be current, but not as pointed.
Good luck with that. Jimmy Kimmel's show has turned into leftist propaganda promoted by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. In fact, you might remember some of his best hits. Take a listen.
Do you think that maybe there have been times where you push the envelope too far?
No, I don't.
You don't regret anything that you've said?
Not at all. I don't think you can go too far.
That was a horrible, horrible thing that happened to the Republican Party.
Said the horrible, horrible thing that happened to the Republican Party. For Donald Trump, this isn't about the Graham-Cassidy bill. It's about getting rid of Obamacare, which he hates primarily because Obama's name is on it. These Americans were totally unaware they were being manipulated by Russians. But here's the thing. Now that they are aware, it doesn't make a difference. They still don't believe it because everything that isn't Fox News is fake news.
If they're so turned off by my opinion on health care and gun violence.
Good riddance?
Well, not good riddance, but riddance.
It's funny to me. I mean, it's like I'm not offended by what his opinion is. I just don't think he's funny anymore.
Yeah.
He's just not funny anymore. So good luck trying to get politics out of Jimmy Kimmel's Oscar presentation.
As I say, one of my great irritations in life is this game that is played by folks in Hollywood and the entertainment community where they make a bunch of content and they do it with politics explicitly in mind. And then if you respond to that, then it's you who are being oversensitive. So if you say that The Shape of Water, aka Grinding Nemo, a movie in which a woman has sex with a fish, but only after she is helped by a communist, a gay guy, and a black woman, and she herself is mute, she helps a fish escape to her bathtub where she has sex with it. If you say this may have some left leanings, if you say this may have some political messages, then you are saying, how dare you mention that shit? It is a great piece of art. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Right? It doesn't matter. The people who have worked on the movie say it's political. It doesn't matter that critics have said it's political. It doesn't matter that viewers know it's political because it's obviously political. If you point out that it's political, no. How dare you call it SJW Splash? You're oversensitive. You're ruining the art. Just terrible. If you mention They Call Me By Your Name, which won a Best Original Screenplay or Best Adapted Screenplay last night. If you mention that that's a story about a 24-year-old dude seducing a 17-year-old dude, which means that the dude who he's seducing is underage, and that if you made that movie about a man and a woman, this would now be part of the Me Too movement. Or if you mention that if that guy who was 24 was named Kevin Spacey, he'd be banned from Hollywood for doing that in real life. No, how dare you? It's a beautiful love story that has no political agenda at all. None. No political agenda. If you mention that there are a slate of movies last night that were mediocre at best, but were praised to the skies because of the intersectionality of the people who made them. So, for example, Lady Bird, meh. Just a meh movie. It's as Sonny Bunch puts it correctly, it is a longish episode of Roseanne. Right? That if you say that, if you point out that Greta Gerwig's movie is like it's not the worst movie ever, but it's not the best movie ever, that's because you must hate women. If you don't pay attention to, if you think that Black Panther was like a good action movie, like a nice good action flick, but it wasn't the most important movie of all time, you are politicizing it, not the New York Times, which ran 1,000 think pieces about how it was the most important movie ever, right? If you say it may not be the most important movie ever, then you are the problem and you're triggered. You see, here's the deal, folks. I'm not angry about any of this. I'm not upset about any of this. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy of people who overtly state that they are acting in political fashion. Then the minute you say, well, you know, I'm not really fond of politics being shoved in my face, they go, oh, clown nose on. No, we're just your jesters. We're just your entertainers. We're just here to entertain. So what really ripped the mask off last night is Jimmy Kimmel made a joke in the middle of the Oscars. First of all, of course, Jimmy Kimmel was asked back because now he is, as Guy Benson puts it, the Pope of Hollywood. He is the secular Pope. And Jimmy Kimmel, who somehow has elevated himself from staring at boobs on The Man Show and asking women to find out what's in his crotch with their faces, legitimately, right? He's moved on from that to being the Me Too, anti-gun, pro-Obamacare spokesperson for the left. So he was asked last night to do his routine, and his routine was predictably not funny in the slightest. So here's my honest take on the Oscars. I did not watch 1 minute of this live, and I was much happier for it. I watched the highlights later. Okay, so I'm taking some of this on faith, that he wasn't good last night. I'm taking that from the critics and the ratings, which were abysmal. I'm taking it also from seeing clips of him because they're not funny. I can't overall give you like every minute of the Oscars because I didn't watch every minute because I have a happy life. And there's no reason why I, like most Americans, should have to suffer through this garbage. But in any case, Jimmy Kimmel rips the mask off of what Hollywood has been saying for years. But it's so funny. When Hollywood says things, we're allowed to take it seriously. But if we say it in the conservative movement, then we're bad. We're terrible. So here's what Jimmy Kimmel said last night.
Of the 9 Best Picture nominees, only 2 of them made more than $100 million. But that's not the point. We don't make films like Call Me By Your Name for money. We make them to upset Mike Pence.
Okay, and the reason that gets a big laugh is because it's true. It's because it's true. So people are saying, well, you think the author of Call Me By Your Name? It's a joke. You think the author of Call Me By Your Name was really thinking of Mike Pence? No, I don't think he was thinking of Mike Pence specifically. But I am sure that the author of Call Me By Your Name was thinking, I'm making a very significant film because it's important that Americans see that homosexual love stories are just as real and intense as heterosexual love stories. I promise you that that was going through his head. Because of course it was going through his head. You wouldn't expect anything else to go through the guy's head. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with his motive. But to suggest there's no political motive at all is silly. Now, when I did my book, Primetime Propaganda, in 2011, I went and I spoke to dozens, 100 people who are like the top creators in Hollywood, the people who created Friends, the people who created Soap, the people who created Golden Girls, the people who created America's Funniest Home Videos, like legitimately every show that was a top show from the 1950s all the way forward to the 2000s, I interviewed somebody from that show. And the message that I got from virtually everyone is, of course we put our politics in our films. Of course we put our politics in our TV shows. Would you expect us to do any differently? And the answer was, no, I don't expect you to do anything differently. But the great lie that they hid behind was, well, we put our politics in there not because we are propagandists. No, 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 no. We put our politics in there because it's what the audience demands. When we make a show like Friends, and we have a lesbian wedding for a season, or when in later seasons, Ross and Rachel have a baby out of wedlock and they're in love with each other, but we don't let them get married because that would be too conventional. When we do all of that, that's just because the audience wants to hear that perspective. It's something the audience wants. Here, look, the ratings prove it. And were the ratings for Friends good? Yes, they were. But Kimmel points out the truth here. The truth is, Hollywood would make that stuff no matter what. Because people in Hollywood want to feel good about themselves. It's so funny. People talk about the D.C. cocktail parties. Talk about the D.C. cocktail circuit. They talk about how all these people in D.C. want to get together and go to these she parties where they hang out. That actually happens in Hollywood. Okay, talk to anyone who has worked in Hollywood. These cocktail parties, they're not as common in D.C. They are really, really, really common in Hollywood. Everybody in Hollywood goes to cocktail parties. This is how they get jobs. And one of the ways they get jobs is by talking to each other about how they virtue signaled this year. They talk to each other about what kind of difference they're making for the world. Just like the ridiculous fictional creators of Google in Silicon Valley. They go around talking about how they're going to make the world better through better compression algorithms. And this is what they do. They go around talking about how their film really made a difference in lives. This is how they think, because if they really thought that they were around to just make movies of people clubbing each other with sticks and that we all laugh and enjoy them because, hey, we all like movies, they wouldn't feel very fulfilled. You know, there's a movie called Sullivan's Travels from the 1940s, a great movie. And the whole movie is about this guy who wants to make comedies. He's a comic writer, and he makes comedies, these very famous comedies, and then he decides he wants to make his deep film because he feels unfulfilled. He feels like he hasn't made his contribution to the art. And so he goes out on the road as a homeless guy, and he experiences all sorts of craziness and suffering. All this terrible stuff happens to him, and he comes back and he realizes he ends up in a chain gang, and they showed these guys comedies at night, some of his comedies, and he realizes, that's me doing something for the world. That's something Hollywood folks do not understand. Okay, they don't want to make their comedies. They don't want to just do what it is that we enjoy them doing. They don't want to make Thor Ragnarok. They want to make Call Me By Your Name. They may make Thor Ragnarok so that they can pay the bills, but what they actually want to make is Call Me By Your Name. It's when Jimmy Kimmel says, when he reveals there, that what they're actually doing is making films specifically designed so that they can feel good about themselves, that it makes them feel good to slap Mike Pence, it makes them feel good to slap people in the middle of the country. That is true. Now, when Jimmy Kimmel says it, we can all take it seriously. But if I say it, then it's because I'm politicizing the issue. I remember we did the exact same thing with regard to, for example, Joe Biden. So back in the early 1990s, there was a show called Murphy Brown. Murphy Brown had Cameron, what was the name of the one? Candace Bergen playing the lead. And Candace Bergen had a baby out of wedlock. And Dan Quayle said, this is not good for the country. It is better if you have mothers and fathers having babies on TV. Right? This is propaganda from the left. And Dan Quayle was ripped up and down. It was his Murphy Brown moment. How dare he suggest that this was politics? It wasn't politics. It was just TV. It was just TV. And then Joe Biden came out in the mid-2000s, right after, or the late 2008, 2009. He came out and he was talking about Murphy Brown, and he was talking about Will and Grace, and he said, of course TV has changed minds. Without Will and Grace, would people have been so accepting of same-sex marriage? And the answer, of course, is no. Propaganda has an effect. That effect is to propagandize. That's the intended goal. And so when Jimmy Kimmel says that they put profit aside to make some stuff like Call Me By Your Name or The Shape of Water, this is true. Does that mean it's deeply wrong and deeply... No. They can do whatever they want. It's a free country. That's fine. But me acknowledging that they're political is no different than them acknowledging that they are political, and that profits, while important to make sure that they boost their industry, their business is no different from my business. The difference is I'm honest about it. I am here to push a certain political point of view, to push principles that I think are important. I'm not doing it just to respond to the market. In fact, I take pride in the fact that we at the Daily Wire don't just respond to the market. It's why we make certain editorial decisions. Right? It's why we don't show the names and faces of mass shooters. I'm sure that hurts us in the click count. But that is something we are willing to do, right? We're willing to take a hit. And I'm honest about the hits that we are willing to take for a particular political view. It's why I never fell onto the Trump train to the extent that I was, talking about everything being MAGA, MAGA, MAGA genius. So I'm sure I would have made more money if I had done that. Because there are certain principles I think are important. The difference is Hollywood has principles it thinks are important, but they lie about it. They won't tell you that. They will say that they are just there to make entertaining content, and the politics are secondary. Utterly untrue, not true. Kimmel makes that suggestion. Kimmel is correct. What Kimmel says here is right. And you have to keep that in the back of your mind when you watch the rest of the Oscars. Because what the Oscars really are about are not just a moment for Hollywood to award the best filmmakers and to show you what's best in film. It's not about that at all. What Hollywood's Academy Awards are really about is what Kimmel is saying. It is about the slap. It is about making people in the middle of the country feel morally less. It is about the suggestion that Hollywood is showing the best of itself. It's Hollywood's book report at the end of the year, where they demonstrate why they should be there. And according to Hollywood, the reason they should be there is not because they entertain us, not because they make movies we want to watch, but because they do important things. And so they have to reward important movies. And you can see Hollywood's shifting standards for itself over the course of Oscar history. One of the reasons that you can see that Hollywood has shifted its view of itself is the change in the demographic of the people who actually watch Oscar films. So it used to be that Oscar films between 1983 and 2003, really, virtually every Oscar film was a major winner in terms of the box office. Virtually every Oscar film did really well at the box office, at least the films that won Best Picture. Right? And so I'm going to look up the list right now, and I will tell you, there has not been an actual good movie that has won Best Picture at the Oscars, like a great movie that's won Best Picture at the Oscars, in my opinion, since 2010, and there hasn't been a box office winner at the Oscars for nearly 15 years. For nearly 15 years. It's really an amazing, amazing thing. Right? Let's look back at the Best Picture winners. So, 2016, the Best Picture winner was Moonlight, which made like $5 at the box office. Before that, it was Spotlight. Fine movie, completely forgettable. You know, I enjoyed Spotlight. I think Moonlight is a fine film. It was obviously the social justice winner because it was about gay black people in the inner city. Whatever, that's fine, but that's not exactly designed to be a box office busting winner. Okay, Spotlight won the year before that. The year before that, it was Birdman, which I thought was just an execrable film. I just thought it was an awful, awful movie. 12 Years a Slave, which I think is a very good movie, but not obviously one that's going to bust down the box office doors. Right? It's about slavery. It is not a highly entertaining film. I think it's a well-made film. I don't think it's as well-made as, for example, Schindler's List. But 12 Years a Slave is a good movie. But is it like an all-time classic movie? Probably not. Argo, which is completely forgettable now. Do you even remember Argo? I remember when it won. Like, I saw it. It's fine. It's fun. But it's not like Argo is not an important movie. The Artist, right? None of these movies made more than $5 at the box office. The King's Speech was the last really great movie that I think was a big winner at the Oscars. The Hurt Locker was the year before that. Slumdog Millionaire, which did decently at the box office, but won over like The Dark Knight. Are you kidding me? Okay, are you kidding me? It hasn't even, that was 2008. Okay, it's been 10 years. Does anyone even watch Slumdog Millionaire now? It's a fine film. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it's not The Dark Knight. Okay, No Country for Old Men is 2007. That was the last big box office winner that actually did really, really well at the Oscars, was No Country for Old Men. So that was 2007. And before that was The Departed, which, meh. Okay, Crash, the worst movie of all time. Okay, $1 Million Baby, again, okay, but sorry, movies about euthanasia don't exactly blow it up at the box office. And then you get, but by 2003, I think it was really in the Bush era that this happened. 2003, by the middle of the Bush era, you can see the shift for Hollywood. The shift goes from, we are here to make movies that entertain you, to we are here to make movies that are specifically designed to say something important. Because before 2003, all of the movies that were winning were big box office winners. The reason this is important is the people in Hollywood, the people who vote at the Academy Awards, see their role differently. They see their role in life, seriously, as we are here in order to, in order not to make big movies that make lots of money and earn us all enormous paychecks. That's something nice that we do. But what we're really here to do is push the message. And you can see that from the Oscar winners, because before that it was Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. It was Gladiator. It was Shakespeare in Love, which did really well. It was Titanic.